Okay, here we go. Hi, Paul Slackett's Good News Broadcast, speaking to Brandon Sanderson. Hi, Brandon. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Okay, good. You have a big book here in front of me.
I do. I do indeed.
You like to write a large book. Brandon actually grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska. He teaches creative writing at the Brigham Young University, lives in Utah with his wife, and has a website called BrandonSanderson.com. And in front of me is a book that has an interesting map. We're going to talk about that in the inside cover, but it's called The Gathering Storm, a sequel to the #1 New York Times bestseller, Life of Dreams, Book 12, The Wheel of Time. Book 12? What do you mean, Book 12?
Book 12. The Wheel of Time series has been going for about 19 years now. I read the first one when I was 15 years old, actually, just a little middle school student. And it's part of what inspired me to become a writer in the first place. And now I'm actually writing or completing books in the series, which is just really actually a surreal experience for me.
So you have got your American dream?
Yeah, in a lot of ways it is. I mean, I became a writer in part because I loved these books. And Robert Jordan passed away in 2007, and by that point I had gotten published on my own, actually with his same publisher, partially because I loved his books so much. And when he passed away, his wife called me on the phone, out of the blue. I didn't apply for this or anything, and said he left behind notes and a request to have someone finish his series for him. Would you be willing to do this? And so it's really like a dream come true, being able to participate in this thing that inspired me so much when I was younger and is one of my favorite series of all time.
Tell us a little bit of the basic premise of The Wheel of Time.
Well, The Wheel of Time is epic fantasy, and epic fantasy is, if you haven't read a lot of it, the idea is that we're trying to write deep historical novels that feel very real about very real characters that are happening in a world that doesn't exist. It actually can be quite challenging because there are often fantastical elements in these fantasy novels, but the idea is to keep it real, to make it feel like you're reading about people who really did live. It's like what Tolkien did with Lord of the Rings is what we try to do. And the premise for this series is, Robert Jordan once explained it in one sentence as what it's like to be told that you are the person who has to save the world, that you, just a normal guy, have to probably sacrifice your life in order to defend and protect everyone else. And it's about the psychology of that and really dealing with the passions and the feelings and experiences of many different people across all walks of life during these last days of the world.
So if you were interviewing Robert Jordan right now, what would you ask him?
Perhaps I would ask him how much of the various characters came from his personal life and experience. I always wondered that because working with these notes, I get to see a side of the characters that I never got to see as just a reader of the series. And it's made me wonder where he drew the experience for various ones and which ones he really connected to. I can see hints of that in the notes. Before he passed away, he actually spent weeks dictating ideas and concepts about this series so that it could be finished. And I've actually got those dictations. I can listen to them and hear his voice as he talks with real love in his voice about these characters and their lives, and they were very real to him.
Okay, and have they become really real to you?
Well, they've always been very real to me. In a lot of ways, these are like my high school friends. I grew up with these people. I was a quiet reader kid in high school, and I did have acquaintances and things at school, but my real friends were the characters in The Wheel of Time and in the books I read, and I would come home and spend time with them. And so writing about a lot of these characters has felt very natural to me. I spent time studying Robert Jordan's works when I was trying to break in as a writer to learn how to write. I considered him a mentor, even though I never met him. I saw him once at a convention, just saw him and was too cowardly to actually go speak to him, my idol. I really wish I had done so now. But, they're my friends.
He died at a very young age.
He did. He was in his late 50s. It was a rare degenerative blood disease. And it was very tragic because he'd been promising for a long time that he knew the ending of the series. He'd been telling everybody, and I had read interviews with him and heard him speak on audio interviews that he knew the last scene. He did get to write that before he passed away, which is one of the wonderful things that we have in the notes. But it was when he passed away. At first, I didn't know any of this because I was just a fan, and so we were all very shattered. He'd been so optimistic on his blog, talking about how he was going to beat this, and then suddenly he was gone, and a lot of us didn't know how to respond.
How do you characterize these books? It's like, for example, a new calendar proposed by T.M. of Gezar. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Celebrated freedom from the Trolloc threat and recorded year as a free year. What is this?
This is what you're looking at. Is you're looking at there are fragments of poems and writings and stories to help increase the realism of the world. When you'll be reading along, often at the beginning of a book, there'll be a quote from a poem or from a journal entry or something like this, or a writing of someone in the world. And it can be very jarring when you first start reading, particularly if you start reading in the middle somewhere. But if you start at the beginning, he does a very good job of stepping you step by step into it. It's not nearly as jarring at the beginning. It starts with just one guy living in, he's a shepherd, and living kind of in the woods with his father, traveling to the nearby village, and you start to pick up on all of this, and it adds elements point by point slowly. So it really, it seems jarring to you when you read a sequence like that, but if you start at the beginning, it's very natural. But it is, like I said, like Lord of the Rings or something like this, where there are a lot of new names, a lot of new concepts that are being dealt with. But, fantasy, one of the great things about it is it allows us to deal with things that we can't deal with in realistic fiction, because we can approach things from a larger-than-life standpoint. We can deal with the really core concepts of what does it mean to be good, what does it mean to be evil. We can deal with adding magical elements as a metaphor for different types of power and these sorts of things, and in ways that you just can't do if you are limited by the bounds of normal life.
At the end of time, when the many become one, the last storm shall gather its angry winds to destroy a land already dying. And its center, the blind man, shall stand upon his own grave, then he shall see again and weep for what has been wrought. This sounds like an environmental speech from the gathering of the UN.
Well, certainly there are a lot of metaphorical interpretations for a lot of epic fantasy. I mean, in this case, when I was writing this, we do have a lot of these concepts of safety versus security versus freedom, and concepts of when is it right to use, for instance, torture comes up in this book. These are metaphorical concepts. It's not like I'm trying to say anything specific, or that Robert Jordan was trying to say anything specific, but the characters deal with things that are analogous to our real world. And Robert Jordan once said, it was a great quote, he said, "I love it when my books raise questions. I don't want to give you the answers. I want you to think and come up with the answers yourself, but I want to give you questions." And so that's part of what we do with epic fantasy. The people talked about Tolkien. I keep going back to him because a lot of people are very familiar with him, but you can read Lord of the Rings as a metaphor for World War II and post-World War II Europe, which is what Tolkien lived through in his life.
Are there some thoughts in regard to a subject called water in the
subject book? called water?
Yes. Do you see any similarities to concerns about water in the world?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are. I wouldn't say it's a major theme in the books, however.
Okay, all right. What would you say are major themes?
Major themes, these have been going for so long that it really depends on what part you're looking at. But I would say that one of the main themes is our concepts of leadership. What is it right for a leader to do? What is it wrong for a leader to do? And what do you trust and who don't you trust? And it deals a lot with the concepts of shades of gray. Who can you trust? Who can't you? And how do you make those decisions as someone who's in charge of who those decisions could cost lives? And it doesn't give a lot of answers. It raises a lot of questions, though.
And what kind of a storm is gathering here?
Well, of course, it's both metaphorical and it is literal. In the books, there is a storm brewing, a non-natural storm, but it's also talking about the coming war, because the end of the books are about Tarmangaiden, the last battle between good and evil, and this is brewing. The Trollocs that you mentioned earlier are a force of darkness and evil who are gathering their armies to come down, and this is all brewing and getting ready, because this book is a preparatory book right before that ending starts to hit us. But it also talks about, metaphorically, the storm that is gathering within one of the main characters, who has been beaten down through a lot of the series, and this guy who's been told he has to save the world, and the sacrifices that he will make, and what that's doing to him personally and to his psychology, and the concept of, it's really also about the ideas of the balance between darkness and hope, and is there hope? I feel that these are hope-filled books, though as things are getting darker and darker, the hope is a little bit harder to find. But it is there, and I think it becomes more precious because of that.
Where's the good news?
The good news is that there is hope. That, you know, if you look, if you just put characters through and people through the forging fire, I believe that most of the time they will come out not only better for it, but choosing what is right. Some people will break, but others will become stronger. And I think that's what this series has shown, is that through adversity, a lot of people become stronger and become their best selves when so much is demanded of them.
Very good. Good news for you personally, Brandon?
Yes, this has been absolutely wonderful to work on. It's been a dream come true.
Okay. Congratulations. Thank you for sharing. And I enjoy this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.